Does the experience change for you just as you get older and you look back, and are there things you remember differently every time you kind of have a celebration like this?
Well, it really surprised me today because I got emotional, talking about my buddy Ronnie Ellis, which totally surprised me. I've been able to talk about that, but I don't know, maybe because I just turned 82 and, I probably don't have a whole lot more of these to do it, but it wasn't, and it's nice to see the guys again. Unfortunately, the bad weather, some of the other guys couldn't make it, but it was just a great time. And my daughter was here, and so terrific day.
When you think back to the series itself, the first game in Montreal, because we have the Four Nations here and obviously a huge ovation for Canada, their first game, what was the reaction like for you when you first came out to the ice for that game one?
Well, we were anticipating. I mean, we knew they were good, but I figured if their goaltender really had a great night and ours didn't, they might, win a game or something like that. But I'll tell you what, well, Phil scored right off the bat, and I scored at the 6-minute mark. And Bobby Clark and I had come back, Ronnie Ellis, and I looked at them and I said, this is going to be a very long series. The first 6 minutes of the game, we recognized that we were not in shape to play these guys. And we hung tough with them, but third period, they just blew us out of the ice. And it was embarrassing as the deuce. It took us a while, too, to become a team. Ronnie Ellis and I were teammates in Toronto, and Bobby Clark was just a younger, more aggressive center iceman, Norm Ullman, so we really didn't have to adjust much, but some of the other combinations just didn't seem to work too well. So it worked out in our favor for sure. I scored 7 goals, and 6 of them were shot. Blew it by him. And, the last one was not. Henderson makes a wild stab for it and falls. Now, who wants to hear that? And so, now the 7th goal, the goal I scored in the 7th game, I think it was one of the best goals of my life. It was a 1-on-4 and went through and put it right under the caution. Now, I would have loved to watch that sucker, but I probably would have got all egoed up and everything. So it was probably better. The Lord knew I needed a garbage goal, so he gave me one. I still get people coming up to me, and did today. One guy just told me I was 9 years old, and my teacher was not going to let us watch the game, and I said, I am not going back, and my dad and I watched the game. So.
How does it feel 50 years later, getting an award like you just received and still having?
Well, it's awful satisfying, but I think, like we've said, we've lost 11 of the guys now, and so just to get together with the fellows and reminisce today like we were, it's just great. Red Berenson's 85, I'm 82, and so we don't have a whole lot of more time for this, and it's something that it just never goes away. Never goes away. Hardly ever. If I'm out in the public, I always have someone come up, tell me where they were, what they were doing, and they don't ask me many questions. That's the thing that I love. They want to tell me where they were, who they were with, and how they felt. And so I just have to sit back and, they might be asking a question, but so I just sit there and listen, and oh my God, that was pretty good.
And what about you and your memory of the team? Did you guys think about just the Cold War, and did it affect how you viewed the Soviets, or was that more?
It was a war. It was against. It was, our way of life against theirs. And, the problem was that we hated them, but we shouldn't have. We should have hated the system, because I've got to know them. Like Tretiak, some of these guys just wonderful, wonderful people. Yeah. And trying to keep a wife happy, just like us, and trying to raise kids and everything. But I've got to know them well, and they're just terrific people. But we hated them in '72, and probably Bobby Clark a little more than most of us. But anyway, that's in the books for me.
If you remember, we're in the middle of the Cold War.
Yeah.
And so it was portrayed right away, our lifestyle, democracy versus communism. So we knew that if we lost, the Soviets would be trumpeting that, see, our way of life is better. So it permeated everything. You couldn't get away from it. Thank God I've never been to a real war, but I was in the trenches with 34 other guys. And they are my friends. They're my lifelong friends. And if you take it back then, all those guys that I sat with, they were the enemy. We never talked to them. We never fraternized with them. So all of a sudden, I'm in Toronto. I'm sitting beside Phil Esposito. Well, I've been hacking away at him, and he's been hacking away at me and for years. And we say things that aren't very kind that I can't say here. And now all of a sudden, we're a team. And it took us a long time. We weren't prepared. We were told this is good. And I knew I'd played the Russians and the Czechs many times, and I was in the Olympics in '64. I never thought it was going to be easy, but certainly we weren't prepared. And I referenced it today. Watching Team Canada Wednesday night, they came shot out like a cannon. We did the same thing in Montreal 52 years ago. But come the second period, we're skating and saying we weren't in shape.
What was it like being in Moscow before you went on the ice in Game 5? Like, what was going through your heads in that dressing room?
Well, it starts off when we land. Our plane didn't go to the terminal. They took us to the back of the airport. They rolled up a set of stairs, and we came down the stairs, and there's a squad of Russian Soviet soldiers with their guns out greeting us. That set the stage for our time in Moscow. On top of that, team officials had made arrangements to bring food in from Sweden. Steaks, milk, some beer. The Soviets stole it all. So there's the game within the game and psychological, all those things. Our phones rang in the middle of the night, especially on game days, all those things. The best thing about coming back is seeing people like Yvonne, seeing my teammates. It's that bond we made. I chased him for how many years? Never caught him, but close. It's the bond we made. I talked about it, it's going to war. We were in the trench together. So coming back 52 years later is always a thrill. And over time, we lose one here, we lose one there. We think highly of them. But we are still a team. We'll always be a team because we did something that no one else could do. No one else did do. And we did it together as a team.
You're still winning awards to this day. How did it feel to the whole team won Man of the Year?
It was a thrill. It was an honor. I thank Glenn Healy, the NHL, the Players Association. It's a great honor to 52 years later still be recognized. People still remember us. It makes it all worthwhile.
All right, so here we are 50 years later, 52 years to be exact. How does it feel, again, another award for this team to become a Man of the Year? Talk about that.
Well, I don't know. We just celebrated the 58th anniversary, and Ken and I were really involved with the committee, and we've been talking about Team Canada 72 almost on a daily basis for a couple of years. Well, this is an honor that the Player Association honor a player for the Player of the Year for any reason, but to name the Team Player of the Year, it's another honor that reflects on Team Canada 72. It's like Canadian Sports Hall of Fame honored the whole team 1 year in the Hall of Fame, so it's an honor. We didn't realize that in 72 that we would go that far.
You just play, and you have no idea what's going to come of it. We had no idea what the series was going to be like, and it turns out to be what it did. And then you have no idea what the feelings are going to be a few years later, many more than a few years later, decades later. You don't know how you're going to feel. You have no idea how a public's going to feel, how media feel. And in the end, you kind of end up being rewarded with whatever the impact was. And it turns out that the impact was big. And so it's pretty terrific, to know that after all this time, that there really was an impact from what we did. I mean, to me, it wasn't the feeling of politics, particularly in 1972, but it was certainly the feeling of nationalism. And I think, there's a difference between the two. And it was deeply national, deeply patriotic in 1972. And again, it's the moment that determines how patriotic you're going to feel, and that's why the presence of all of those Canadian fans in Moscow and how they reacted. I mean, they were just so into it, so excited, and to me, I mean, that was the lasting impression that I have of that series.
All of a sudden, politics got involved into this, and we had really nothing to do with it. We started as a hockey series, and we were very proud to represent our country.
I think we realized at one point that there was a big difference when one of our players, and I think it was Paul Henderson, slid into the boards, and our team doctor was watching the game from the stands, and he was alarmed, and he tried to get down on the ice, and the soldiers literally ringed the whole rink, and they had guns and watching the game. And when something like that happened, it just about turned out to be a fight or a wrestling match for our doctor to get out to attend. They didn't understand. And we didn't understand the reaction, as Ken mentioned, back in Canada, how this was building. And there were a lot of bad feelings about the team and a lot of questions, proud Canadians, we need better players, or we need to change everything, or whatever. But by the time it was over, it was really over. And Canada was affected by that series more than we dreamt.